tattoo. He does. And that tattoo is my name. And that tattoo is your name. God knows your name. I don't know what you came carrying today. I don't know the heaviness of your heart, the burden that you're here with, whether it's a physical thing, marriage, prodigal child, financial. He knows your name. He will not and has not, nor will ever forsake you, because He knows your name. Isn't that incredible? I mean, we could go home. I mean, some of you are going, yeah, the Titans are on. Seriously, I mean, if we get that, if you get that today, He knows my name. It changes everything. Isn't that awesome? Wow. Keep playing one more sec, Tara. I'm chasing rabbits. I promise I'll get to where we need to be. Listen, I can't tell you how thrilling it is for me to watch us starting to get what it means to worship. Today it sounded like you came ready. I mean, that is the loudest I've ever heard this building be. It's like the cry of your heart today was, I have to get this out of me. I have to worship. And so now, those of you that, you know, don't sit there going, well, He just wants us to worship like He does. No, I don't. But I want you to worship. It doesn't have to be like me, and I remember when I very first started getting this, I was a youth pastor years ago, and we went to a youth camp, and there was a girl named Donna that she dripped Jesus. She had such a heart, and at youth camp, she started worshiping. We got home, and you know how typical after you get home, the youth have a youth worship night, and they get to tell about camp. And you know, a lot of the kids got up there. Oh, we had so much fun. We played capture the flag, and you know, the food was gross. And this girl stood up. Her name was Donna. She stood up and she said, you know, for a long time I've been embarrassed to worship in front of you the way I wanted to, but now I'm going to. You be embarrassed. I'm like, wow. And I don't want to embarrass you, but I'm going to be me, and I want you to be you. And you know, but because we're after the heart of God, right? He knows our name. Wow, I want to come out of my skin on that one. So anyway, I want to be around desperate people. I do. Gary and I talk about that on job sites. I loved him because he's desperate for Jesus, you know. And I want to go to a church that's desperate for Jesus and goes, God, I have nothing but you are enough. All right. Thanks, Tara. Wow, you just stopped right in the middle. What? I thought you'd finished the little... Okay, fine. All right. Oh, man. Yeah. Stand up and take a bow. Those of you watching on the internet, that is Terry Price. No. Oh, man. Joseph kind of covered the flags and all of that. Well, here's where we're going today, and this is going to help make sense. We as America are the envy of the world. Okay, remember that sentence, and this is going to make a lot of sense, okay? There's a Jewish parable about an envious man and a greedy man that met a king. And the king says, here's what I want to do. One of you can ask anything of me and I will give it to him. But the other gets twice as much. Well, this put these two guys in a quandary. They were in a quag. Because the greedy man didn't want the other guy to get twice as much as he did. And the envious man didn't want the other because he would get twice as much. But the greedy man didn't want because he wanted everything there was to be had. So finally the greedy man prevails on the envious man and says, okay, why don't you go first? The envious man asked the king to pluck out one of his eyes, knowing that the greedy man would lose both of his. Envy is a scary thing. Herman Melville called envy the rabies of the heart. Richard Condon said it is the cancer of the psyche. Thomas Aquinas described it as the sorrow at another's good. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Russian author, chapter 1 of Loving God, Chuck Colson's book. Terry and I read a thing one time, and all of a sudden the hair on both of my arms just like, what in the world? And Chuck Colson walked in. I mean, just this guy. Anyway, he wrote one of the classics called Loving God, and chapter 1 talks about the conversion of Alexander Solzhenitsyn, one of the best chapters of any book I've ever read. Anyway, but Solzhenitsyn said that our envy devours us most of all. Dorothy Sayers, she was one of the Inklings. The Inklings were this group of writers who would get together in this pub years ago. You might recognize a couple of names that would get together. C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien. They would get together and just talk about what they had written that week. And they would just bounce it. You think, I don't know. God, you really think that'll sell? Well, I don't know. You know, anyway, Dorothy Sayers was a lady in the Inklings. And here's what she said about envy. Envy begins by asking plausibly, why should I not enjoy what others enjoy? And it ends by demanding, why should others enjoy what I may not? Okay, think about these flags and today, and listen to Dorothy Sayers again. See if this doesn't sound like something maybe Osama bin Laden might have thought. Why should I not enjoy what others enjoy is how it starts. And it ends, why should others enjoy what I may not? See, envy enters when seeing somebody else's happiness or success, we first compare ourselves with them and their conditions, and we might find ours lacking, and then out of the hurt of our wounded self-esteem, we seek to bring the other person down to our level by word or deed. Remember that favorite quote of mine about envy that says, envy is the insatiable desire for everyone else to be as unsuccessful as me. So envy moves. So envy, we're going to look at this in a minute. Envy moves from dejection to disparagement to destruction. James, you don't have to go here, but if you're a note taker, write this down. James 1:15 talks about how temptation comes and it conceives and it leads to sin, and then sin leads to death. It's this progression of sin. You're going to see this progression in envy today. How it starts here and where it ends up. Okay? So but sometimes envy is petty. It's not like these flags. Sometimes it's petty, but it's always insatiable and it's always consuming, all-consuming. And what the envier cannot enjoy, no one else should enjoy. And so the envier loses every enjoyment. So if you have your Bible, turn to 1 Samuel chapter 18. Okay? And we're going to look at this progression in a man's life. Okay, so last week we looked at when David killed Goliath. And so that has just happened, and then the story picks up right after that in chapter 18. The first few verses we looked at months ago about the relationship between Jonathan and David, and that's where it starts in chapter 18, verses 1 through 5 or whatever. So now go to verse 6, okay? And it happened as they were coming, when David returned from killing the Philistine, that the women came out of all of the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul. Okay, they're having this parade. King Saul, Goliath's dead. The Philistines have gone away. Good, we're safe. And so they all come out to see King Saul. He thinks, with tambourines, with joy and musical instruments. And oh, he's so excited. They've come to see me. They've got their tambourines. Oh, it's parade is about me. And the women sang as they played and said, Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands. Okay, what's going on here is this. Like if you go to a high school football game, you know, I say black, you say gold, black, gold. You know how the bleachers are doing it? That's maybe you don't. Okay, I guess they don't do that. And all right.
Black and gold.
Oh, black and, well, it's easier to say than, huh? Orange and white. Orange and white. No. I say black. You say, okay. I'm playing, Joe.
I say dumb, you say dumb.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. When I was at Baylor, one side of the stadium would go Baylor, and the other side would go Bears. That's kind of what they're doing here. Saul has slain his thousands, and then the other women, but David his tens of thousands. Saul has slain his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. Uh-oh. Then Saul became very angry. Okay, let's start right here, okay? Envy leads to anger. Okay, the root word for angry, for this word, means to burn, to be kindled, to glow with anger. To be incensed. It's like lighting a fire, okay? The fire is lit. The match is struck right here. It's kindled, okay? Now, we all know the story. Left unattended, that fire is like the fire that almost took Terry's mom and dad's house when 170,000 acres burned recently in New Mexico. It's like the forest fire, the fires in Texas around the Austin area that are just, I mean, lapping up acres and acres in seconds. Left unattended, any kind of sin. We're looking at envy today, but any kind of sin. That's why you cannot entertain it. I cannot entertain. When the match strikes, they have to put it out, okay? So that's the little first step here. Envy leads to anger. It also, in studying this word, it also has the sense or idea of fretting. And I wonder, listen to this, you don't have to just jot this down. I wonder if David might have been thinking about this moment when he wrote these words in Psalm 37, 7 and 8. Listen to this. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way. I wonder if he was thinking of King Saul. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret. It only leads to evil doing. That's Psalm 37 verses 7 and 8. The word evil doing there means deliberately planning to harm others. You think? That's what Saul did. Okay, so envy leads to anger. Secondly, let's keep reading. Saul became angry, for this saying displeased him, and he said, they've ascribed to David 10,000s, but to me they've only ascribed thousands. Now what more can he have but the kingdom? And Saul looked at David with suspicion from that day on. So envy leads to anger. Anger leads to suspicion. Suspicions, checking up on. I got to get a Facebook page so I can check up on what she's doing. And I got to follow her on Twitter because just this envy, this gnawing things. And it's almost like you begin to stalk. I got to find out, why should she have how dare her? On and on. And so envy leads to anger. Anger stirs up this suspicion, always having to know what they're up to. Listen to me. That's got to be exhausting. Okay. Now it came about on the next day that an evil spirit from God came mightily upon Saul, and he raved in the midst of the house, while David was playing the harp with his hand as usual, and a spear was in Saul's hand. And Saul hurled the spear, for he thought, I will pin David to the wall. Suspicion leads to wanting to wound someone. So we got envy leads to anger. Anger leads to suspicion. Suspicion leads to wanting to wound. Now the word for pin does not mean kill. Okay? Here's what it means. It means to strike, to hurt, or to wound. It's a non-fatal striking of an object. Okay? So he's not ready to kill him yet. He wants to pin him to the wall. He wants to wound him, hurt him. So it makes us want to hurt or wound someone. Not necessarily physically all the time, but some of us can wound like crazy with words. And this envy thing, and it gives way to anger and it's suspicion, and then it gets to this point, it's like, I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to hurt you. Okay, never mind. So we backbite, and we gossip, and we spread rumors. We do everything we can to discredit that person. Sometimes to the person's face, saying things, words that wound. I'm going to pin you to the wall. Okay, let's keep going. Now Saul was afraid of David, for the Lord was with him, but had departed from Saul. This is still in this kind of a wound. The one definition of the word feared right here is the emotion and the intellectual anticipation of harm. What one feels may go wrong for him. It's like Saul, it says Saul was afraid because he's like, something's going wrong for me. Therefore Saul removed him from his presence. Removed from his presence and appointed him as commander of 1,000. He went out and came in before the people. And David was prospering in all of his ways, for the Lord was with him. When Saul saw that he was prospering greatly, he dreaded him. The word dreaded means to turn aside, like from the road. To turn aside from the road. That is, for the purpose of lodging for the night. To dwell as a stranger. Isn't that interesting? So envy uproots us and makes us feel like a stranger, even in our own. Saul was the king. He's the king of the entire country, and now all of a sudden he's a stranger? Envy has got him to this place. He's so afraid and dreadful and suspicious and all of that all of a sudden his whole world just goes boom right here to this one. It's just now he and David. You see what that does? It doesn't have to be envy, it's any sin where it presses in and it turns you away to now this point is like, I am a stranger. Okay? Like we don't belong. Okay, verse 17. Then Saul said to David, verse 16, but all Israel and Judah loved David, and he went out and came in before them. Then Saul said to David, here's my oldest daughter Merab. I will give her to you as a wife, only be a valiant man for me and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul thought, okay, my hand shall not be against him. Let the hand of the Philistines be against him. So all of a sudden now, we've got to this place where wanting to wound, and now wanting to wound leads to making us scheme up these things to try to trap the other person, to make them captive to us. But David said, who am I? What is my life or my father's family in Israel that I should be the king's son-in-law? And so it came about at the time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David. She was given to Adriel for a wife. And now Michal, her sister, Saul's other daughter, loved David. And so when they told Saul, the thing was agreeable, and he said, I'll give her to him so that she can become a snare. I don't know if you know what a snare is. We came from Texas, and there's a lot of coyotes and stuff. I know y'all say coyotes, but in the West you say coyote. And so it's like there would be ranchers that may have sheep or goats, and coyotes were bad news. And so they literally would hire trappers for, $25 or $50 a coyote for everyone that was shot or trapped or whatever. And so these trappers, we had a friend named Randy that was a trapper, and I would ride with him sometimes, and he would find these places where an animal had slid under the fence, and so he would set a snare. It's kind of like a noose kind of a thing. We're a little more sophisticated here. We got live traps. But out in the country, it's like you set a noose for an animal, and they would trip it, and it would kill them. So that's what the idea of snare is. It's a noose for catching animals, this trap, and this animal would wander into it and be caught suddenly. That's what Saul is trying to do. So he's gotten to this place where now he's even using his own daughters as a snare. I am going to capture him. I'm going to bring him into my captivity. This envy is out of control. This envy was out of control. That was what was going on. And it happened for the country. It happened, our lives are totally changed forever and ever because of envy that was out of control. But don't be so quick to point your finger at bin Laden without recognizing the very root in yourself and in myself. 9/11 will be different for me because I go, you know what? I have the same root in me sometime. Oh, we don't want to admit that. I don't want to admit this, but I am one step away from the most heinous sin ever. You are too. We don't want to, not me, yes you are. The Bible says all men are like grass. Okay, let's keep going. And so Saul thought, I will give her to him, she may become a snare, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Therefore Saul said to David, for a second time you may be my son-in-law today. Oh, joy. So then Saul commanded his servants, okay, speak to David secretly. Tell him this, hey, David, the king delights in you. Really? The king delights in you, and all of his servants love you. Now, therefore, become the king's son-in-law. So the Saul's servant spoke those words to David, but David goes, is it trivial in your sight to become the king's son-in-law? I'm a poor man and lightly esteemed. The servants of Saul reported to him according to these words which David spoke. And Saul said, okay, now go back and say this to David. The king does not desire any dowry except 100 foreskins of the Philistines to take vengeance on the king's enemies. Right. Yeah. He's trying to go get David killed. Okay? Now Saul planned to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. Okay, so the fifth thing, if you're keeping notes, the fourth was the wanting to wound leads to a trap, trying to make a captive, and then that leads to make us bring others in our little plan for the downfall. Okay, so now the king is whispering, hey, go say this to David, and it sounds like a bunch of middle schoolers. Hey, go ask her if she likes me, that kind of thing. Okay, never mind. All right. I'm up here by myself. Okay. Hello. All right. But you and I do the same thing. We enlist other people. We want other people to get in on getting other people on our side so we can bring other people down. Then verse 25. The king doesn't desire anything. Now Saul planned to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. So that leads us to begin to make these plots where we're going to bring someone down. Okay, it may not be a physical death, but it will be death. I'm going to bring this person down, and it brings us to where we begin to plot and scheme for how all of this is going to happen. Chapter 19, verse 1. And now Saul told Jonathan his son and all his servants to put David to death. So see, now he's even got his son involved. He's used his daughters. He's used his son. The guy has gone crazy. He's gone mad with envy. Sin drives you to that place. Okay, man, wow, that's so bad about him. Well, I mean, it's so easy to see it in other people's. Listen, people, not people's. We are so close to this very thing. Sin, if we don't take care of it in the first stage, it gets like the fire that was talked about, where it gets totally out of control. Okay, chapter 20, verse 30 through 33. Chapter 20. Please take your time to read this. I'm just kind of whetting your appetite, and you read and fill in all the blanks. Chapter 20, verse 33. And then Saul hurled his spear at him to strike him down. And so Jonathan knew that his father had decided to put David to death. Okay? So he's worked through all of this, and now Jonathan, David's best friend, knows, okay, this is the real deal. It's come down. It's not a plot anymore. It's actually happening. It's actually taking place. It leads us to be so angry that we begin to turn on those closest to us. Let's keep going through 33. Wait, 20, yeah, 30 through, I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself. Chapter 20, verse 30. Let's go back to verse 30. Then Saul's anger burned against Jonathan. I got ahead of myself. Then Saul's anger burned against Jonathan, because remember, Jonathan and David were best friends. So here's Saul. He hates this young man because there's something about him that he knows that he can't have. And so Saul's anger, it's out of control. But Jonathan, Saul's son, is his enemy's best friend. And so now he's in a quag. And so his anger burns against Jonathan now, and he said to him, "You son of a perverse, rebellious woman." Okay. You get that? Wow, that's in the Bible? Yeah. "Do I not know you are choosing the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness?" What? He's a lunatic now. Okay. "For as long as that son of Jesse lives on the earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established." In other words, I'm not giving you the kingdom as long as that guy lives. Now he's just like, he's getting after his son. I'm withholding. Can you see what this does? "Therefore now send and bring him to me, for he surely must die." But Jonathan answered Saul and his father and said to him, "Why should he be put to death? What has he done?" Now watch this. You can't reason with somebody when they get to this point. Okay? Saul hurls his spear at him to strike him down. He's now throwing spears at his own son. It's amazing what we sacrifice our kids for. Some of us have hurled spears at our own sons. We've gotten to a place where we have tried to harm our own out of our own warped self whatever. It's incredible. Chapter 22, verse 8. Please read this on your own. 22, verse 8. Saul is talking. He's now talking to his servants. it's unbelievable how far this gets. So he's talking to his servants. He said, all of you have conspired against me so that there is no one who discloses to me when my son makes a covenant with the son of Jesse, and there is none of you who is sorry for me. Oh, man, it's pitiful. Or discloses to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me to lie in ambush as it is this day. It now leads to, so all of that is the anger, it turns on those that are closest, and now that turns into that everyone is against me. Everyone is against me. Okay, let's keep going. Then Doeg, the Edomite, who was standing by the servants of Saul, answered and said, I saw the son of Jesse coming in Nob to Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub. And he inquired of the Lord for him, gave him provisions, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. Oh boy, that ought to be good news. Now, the sword. Okay. Then the king sent someone to summon the priest and all of his father's household, the priests who were living in Nob, and all of them came to the king. And Saul said, listen now, son of Ahitub. And he answered, here I am, Lord. Then Saul said to him, why have you and the son of Jesse, David, conspired against me, in that you have given him bread and a sword, and have inquired of God for him, that he should rise up against me by lying in ambush as it is this day? See, David, and we're going to look at this next week, we're going to look at the flip side, how David handled all of this stuff. But in Saul has just said he thinks everybody is lying in an ambush for him. He thinks that David is trying to get him, when none of that was going on at all. Then Ahimelech answered the king and said, and who among all your servants is as faithful as David? So this priest is saying, Saul, get a grip. David is the one that's most loyal to you. Even the king's son-in-law, who is captain over your guard and is honored in your house. Did I just begin to inquire of God for him today? Far be it from me. Do not let the king impute anything to his servant or to any of the household of my father. But the king says, you will surely die. Anyway, long story short, he wipes out all of the priests. Unbelievable. He's killing innocent people. You see David's heart in verse 22. David finds out that the priests had been killed, and David said to Abiathar, I knew on that day when Doeg the Edomite was there that he would surely tell Saul, I have brought about the death of every person in your father's household. What? David's going, when I was there, this thought went through my mind. I bet he goes and tells the king, I'm responsible for all of these priests' death. I mean, you get just such the antithesis of what these two guys' lives are like. David's taking responsibility for happening to be somewhere, and he didn't say something that he may not have ever even should have said, and yet he feels that. Okay? All right, let's go on. Keep reading through chapter 23. All right, so quickly, I'm not going to have time to do all this. So how do you get rid of that? I mean, how do we not let the match strike in the first place? How do I make sure that envy doesn't enter my heart? I mean, it's little things. Man, it must be nice. Whoop, strike. Wow, wish I had that. Strike. I mean, it starts out. This started out as something little, but it wasn't taken care of. Listen, sin has to be taken care of. Okay, but this envy thing, tell me. All right, I'm going to go really quickly, okay? I'll have to unpack it at another time. This is going to sound so elementary, and you're going to go, nah, I don't know. Listen. Okay, then you tell me what you think it is. All right. Here's number one. First of all, you got to know who God is. You got to know you really have to know who God is. See, Saul didn't know God. Even though God had anointed him, remember, the people go, we want a king, we want a king. So, okay, here's your king. And he gets anointed. But did you know, if you read back through his life, he never prayed? He had David do it for him. He never spoke to God. He had David or Samuel, or I'm Samuel, not David. He had Samuel do it for him. We have to know who God is. I mean, really understand who He is. Jot these down, because we're not going to have time to look them all up. I wish we did. Maybe I ought to save it. Now I'll go ahead. All right. Know who God is. That way you get this proper picture, okay? You got to understand that God is kind. Titus chapter 3, verses 3 through 7. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 7. Romans chapter 2, verse 4. I mean, it's on and on and on. To understand who God is, that at the heart of God, at the very heart, He's kind. That He is compassionate. Nehemiah 9:17. And Exodus 34:6. I got to read you that one. Exodus 34:6. Moses is on the mountain and he's getting the tablets. And then the Lord passed by him. The Lord passed by in front of him and proclaimed, the Lord. Okay, this is the Lord talking. This is God talking, okay? It sounds like that when I can't go there. Like when people talk third person, you know, like Ocho Cinco. Yeah, Ocho Cinco had a good day today. What? It's like, so this is God doing His Ocho. No, I'm playing. So God's going, the Lord God, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in loving kindness and truth. Listen, God's telling us Himself who He is. Why do we think we know who God... let me say it this way. We think we understand who God is, and it's like it's so warped. Let God tell you who He is. Here's God saying, okay, let me defend myself. Here's who I am. I am compassionate, and I'm gracious. If you would let me be, I will be so gracious to you. I'm slow to anger, and I abound in loving kindness.